Guys, switching gears here, the showdown between Twitter and Elon Musk, that continues. Twitter hitting back at Musk, calling his decision to pull out, quote, invalid and wrongful, end quote, in a letter to the billionaire. Let's bring in our own Yahoo Finance legal correspondent, Alexis Keenan, with more on this response from Twitter. Okay, so now what is Twitter hitting back with?
Okay, so this is just a letter at this point, and it's not the lawsuit that we're all watching for. Twitter has already said that it will, in fact, file a lawsuit asking for Musk to specifically perform, meaning go ahead and buy the company, go through with the contract. But this letter, as you pointed out, Twitter is saying that Musk's representations about why he should be able to get out of this deal are A, invalid, B, wrongful, and they also call it a purported termination letter, so they're not giving any credit to Musk's arguments here. In writing to Musk's attorneys, Twitter's lawyer, they say, contrary to the assertions in your letter, Twitter has breached none of its obligations and Twitter has not suffered and is not likely to suffer a company material adverse effect. In other words, the company is saying there that there's been no change to Twitter's business to really alter it as a business entity to anything different than what Musk negotiated to buy. So, in effect, just trying to invalidate Musk's arguments here. But we're going to have to see the actual lawsuit to find out what Twitter's arguments really are, as promised.
Musk he's really been flexing on Twitter. He has just continued to go at it the past 24 hours. Not surprising, but is Twitter forced to release any form of new secret data as part of this push or this battle into the courts? I mean, Musk seems to be under the impression here that Twitter's sitting on data that he didn't get to.
Right. So if we put the argument in Musk's favor, you have to look at what he's saying. He says that he's not getting adequate data that's useful to him, that he can independently analyze so that he can figure out the percentage or the frequency of fake accounts on Twitter's platform. Twitter has long said that number is below 5%. Musk is pushing back on that, saying, show me the data. And he's just saying that he doesn't have enough here. So that's what the parties are going to fight about. The court is going to have to look at whether Musk is or is not under that contract entitled to that data. Twitter says it's given him enough. They've given him the raw data, that he should be able to take that and do what he will. Also, Twitter's saying that it will continue to provide reasonably requested information. That's the rub.
I mean, we're discussing all of this as though it is this all was real, right? In other words, like, I know from a legal perspective, you have to, that's what and the courts have to consider it as such. He got tired of it. He didn't want to do it anymore. He's looking for an excuse to get out.
Could be.
I mean, that's the bottom line. He either got tired of it, or he decided it was too expensive, or
or discussing it as if he followed precedent for prior acquisitions.
Right, like this is a normal situation. This is not a normal situation. I saw a headline this morning in an opinion piece that said he's the material adverse event, and indeed he was.
Yeah, and one argument is if you wanted this kind of diligence, Musk could have written that as a term into the original contract.
He waived his diligence.
Well, he's going to argue about that. He's going to say, no, I did not. He specifically says in his own letter that he did not waive diligence, that Twitter has an ongoing obligation under its warranties to keep providing things he's asking for. So they are definitely going to argue over that fact, and we'll have to see what the Delaware Chancery Court thinks about that.
He's essentially turned the stock into dead money, and this is what I wrote about in the Morning Brief newsletter yesterday. Now you have the street, many analysts looking for Twitter shares, seeing a little bit of recovery in the pre-market, but the bottom dropped out into the close yesterday. You saw analysts cut their price targets to low 20s in some cases. Brett Thill, friend of our show over at Jefferies, sees $23.50 as a potential price target for Twitter. I mean, that's just massive value destruction. Massive.
Can I just add here that even within the original offer, looking at the language right now, there is no mention of bots. There's no mention of based on the data that he wants turned over to him so that he could actually look at the figures that Twitter has put out there in the past. And so with that, will the courts look at that original offer and say, no, you have to be upheld to what you put in that offer originally, and to Julie's point, waiving perhaps any opportunity to come back on this and say, well, I didn't have the data ahead of time?
Yeah, we don't know. That's the $44 billion question here, is how is the court going to read this gray language? And to both Twitter and Musk. Both have highly priced attorneys. Both of them could have written even a tighter contract. So the chancellor is going to look at that language, and that's what's going to dictate is what does the paper actually say.
Oh, I look forward to discussing this for many days to come. Thank you so much, Alexis. Appreciate it.